everyone, and welcome to Life Mastery TV, your source for inspiration, empowerment, and fulfillment. My name is David McLeod. I am your Life Mastery coach and author of the book, A Life to Die For. This is episode 167, A Gift of Natural Joy. Now, even though we often interchange the two words joy and happiness, they really are not the same thing. Most psychologists agree that happiness relates to the way we feel in relation to conditions, circumstances, objects, and events. In other words, happiness is like an elevated form of pleasure. Joy, on the other hand, relates to our sense of connection to our spiritual nature or to our understanding of God or spirit or consciousness. While happiness is something we experience as a feeling, that is a combination of sensation, emotion, and thought, joy is more correctly defined as a state of being. Furthermore, the more you allow all of your senses and emotions and thoughts to settle into a quiet state, the more you connect to a serene form of contentment that is your natural spiritual state. That is your joy. Now, this episode of Life Mastery TV will delve into this topic of joy in some detail, and we'll come to see it as a true gift that is available to us anytime we want it. In order to help me bring as much wisdom about this topic as possible, I've invited an author, personal development trainer, international speaker, and life coach to this show. She's been on this show before. After receiving her life coach certification, she became a licensed trainer for the programs Zest for Life and Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And she's been running workshops for the last 15 years. In 2018, she wrote and published her own book, Freedom to Be Me. You see that? I'm delighted to have my own personalized signed copy of this book with a special message right there on the inside from the amazing author. There you go. Anyway, she wrote this book as a way to fulfill her passion and share her journey and her tools with other people. So please join me in welcoming the delightful and very joyful Azmina Jiwa to our program today. Welcome, Azmina. It's so great to have you back. I know you were here before, but I think it's been over a year now, probably closer to almost 2 years that you were here on the show.
Yes, it is. And it's such a pleasure to be here and join with your lovely topics that you're always choosing. All your lovely past episodes are so wonderful.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And as I will share later, all those episodes are available on my website at lifemasterytv.com. I'll give more details later. So, Azmina, I know that, in your bio, you talk a little bit about the struggle that you had that kind of came to a head around the year 2000. I think you mentioned that you found yourself feeling anxious and unhappy, and yet you somehow found a way to bring your amazing joy to the fore and into the world. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that journey and how you got where you are today?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I found myself, like you said, about 20 years ago in this place where I was feeling very miserable. I'd done so much in my life, but I was still feeling unworthy and anxious and just worried. I get up in the morning and I would have these palpitations. Oh my God, what's this other day going to bring? But going through like this for about 2-3 months, really feeling tearful and not happy, somewhere in, I guess you get that little ray of hope because, I just sat down and prayed. And I remember a couple of books where I read that really this is the time, if you're feeling this like in my 40s, going perimenopausal, if you haven't worked on yourself and haven't felt that you are good enough in life, then this is really the time to work on yourself. And so that set me on that journey of learning all the tools. So I went to workshops like Zest for Life and, read all the books, including Dr. Susan Jeffers' book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, because I found I was living with a lot of fear, living with fear of judgments and, things going wrong. And so when I learned these tools, I was absolutely fascinated. In fact, at that time, I thought, why are we not taught these tools at a young age? And so it became my passion to spread this word to the world. And that's really led me then to do different sorts of training. And then hence I started sharing my message.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And, and one of the things that you mentioned you mentioned this concept of unworthiness. Mm. It seems to be a common thing that many, many people, they use that same word, or maybe they have a slightly different phrase, like rather than not worthy, they might say, I don't matter, or something like that. That's a common problem. Where do you suppose that comes from? I mean, I have my own idea, but I'd like to know what you think.
Yeah, well, from what I gathered and learned and then, put it to my own life, a lot of it is our beliefs. And where do the beliefs come from? They come from our upbringing.
Exactly.
I know that my mom was such a people pleaser. She wanted to make everything right by other people, not taking care of herself. And then our society, you should be, if you look after yourself, you're selfish. You must serve. You must do things for other people. And so these beliefs really is what affects us, I think, as we get adults. And as an adult, I learned that actually I feel it's actually more selfish not to look after yourself. Because when you have taken care of yourself, and I find I have so much energy now that I can give more to people than I used to.
Right.
So
that's definitely in alignment with my own experience. My mom wasn't too much of a people pleaser, I'll say that. But she was a kind of a controlling person. She liked to be in charge, and she liked to be, she liked to have everything the way she wanted it. And I remember when I was only 3 years old, she said something to me, 8 words. I know you better than you know yourself. And those 8 words they're innocent enough. Mm-hmm. And from the perspective of a mother to a child, they might even be to some degree true. But the way it hit me, the way it landed on me was it meant that I didn't know myself. It meant that I had to give up all my wants and needs in order to satisfy other people. I had to look to other people in order to know who I am. Now it was a long process. It was something that happened, when I was very young, and the unconscious aspect of it led me to a place where I got more and more resentful and angry over time of other people, even because I had spent all this time trying to be a people pleaser and doing a very poor job at it, I might add. So yeah, I can understand. And, in the process of doing that, I came to the belief that I'm not worthy to know myself.
Yes.
I'm not worthy to just be who I am.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a false belief, but it's what I chose to believe based on what my mother told me when I was only 3 years old.
Yes, and at that age, we don't know we have a choice, do we? Nobody says to us.
Of course.
You have a choice, yeah. And,
right.
and similarly, yeah. So similarly, I think I went through life until that point, just living with that, pleasing everybody else and not me, never thinking. And that very first workshop I went to, David, I cried. The half of the morning, it was a whole day workshop. The half of the half morning, I was just tearful because we had to really look at I had to look at who I was with a picture of myself as a child.
Right.
And I thought, oh my God, I've lost the sense of who I am, which is really what you're talking about, isn't it?
Exactly.
We lose the sense of who we are because nobody checked in with us. What would you like?
Right.
What are you feeling? That wasn't ever asked.
Right.
We were told what we were supposed to feel.
Exactly. And on top of that, then so what we end up doing for the rest of our life is trying to reconnect to the truth of who we are.
Yes.
And maybe this is part of the whole life journey. We come into this world as spiritual beings with a very clear sense of our spiritual connection to God, spirit, consciousness. And then we come into this world as physical beings and we immediately forget that. And then so we spend the rest of our lives trying to remember it. It's almost like a joke.
Yeah. Yes. And from little interest, I do have a lot of interest in spirituality, but probably a little bit, I know we choose this path as well, don't we? If that's true, what people are saying. So I guess we wanted to experience it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd like to just pause here for a second, Azmina, and just invite anybody who's watching the live presentation. I want you to know that there's a chat box on the screen there. If you have comments or questions, or if you're resonating with what we're talking about, please feel free to put whatever you feel like in there, and we will respond to it as we can. So I'd just like to ask right now, how many of you can resonate with this idea of somehow giving yourself up at an early age and then spending a long period of time after that trying to reconnect to that truth? I'm curious to see how many people feel that. Wow, look at that. Sarah says, absolutely. And Lordiel, everything you've said is so true. But that's I think we're onto something that's really, really important here, Azmina. And so as we start thinking about this concept of a natural gift, that this joy that is the natural state, what happened to us that we kind of, separated from that? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So what happened? I guess what happened was, like you said earlier, we are told what to think, what we are. If we do something wrong, oh, you shouldn't have done that, instead of guiding us. And so when we constantly are told, and we are nowhere also told that you are unique and you are special and you are wonderful. And so I think that's kind of what happens. I like to look at it as the core of us when we are born with that joy. And then look at children until 2-3-year-old. And then we have these layers of what people have told us. And then we build these layers around the core of the onion.
Oh, yeah.
And now we are learning to peel them off slowly to get back to who we are.
What a beautiful image. Yeah, that's exactly right. I hadn't thought of it. I've heard about the peeling the onion thing. But as you mentioned, we start off as a core of an onion. And we keep adding those layers at the beginning. And it's later on we say, oh, my God, this is not working. I have to take off all these layers. It's like layers of wallpaper. You're trying to change the appearance of the room.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's what happened to us.
Really, and this is not to make anybody wrong, but I think we all do it, and we all do it because we're trying to find our way in the world. We're trying to find our own way to walk through the world without pissing too many people off. That's ultimately what we're doing. Because what happens when we piss people off? Well, then they react. They get angry at us. They might want to attack us. They might want to do some bad things, and nobody wants that to happen to them.
That's right. Yes, and then we get into this drama, don't we?
Yeah, exactly.
Into the stories.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh my God, get me started on stories. How many people talk about? You've heard the expression, you are the sum of your experiences. Well, absolutely. That's absolutely not true. It is true that you have had a lot of experience. That is true. And you can write some great stories as a result of those experiences, but you are still the one who experienced it, not the experiences themselves.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yes. And talking about our uniqueness and accepting ourselves now that we're learning to peel off these layers. The way I like to explain it is, we all have journey in our life. Right? We are all going to the same end, which is our death, or to the source or whatever. Well, we all have our individual journeys to get there. And those journeys are full of our experiences, how we are molded by our parents, the beliefs and everything else. And so at every point in our life, however we behave or however others behave with us, is the only way we know how at that moment, don't we? Mm-hmm. Or even if some things we do, which are bad, like stealing and things, back of our mind, we know it's wrong. But that at that moment, something happens that makes you do that. And it's the only way you knew how to behave. Right. So that really allows me to, feel that I can accept myself and accept others with their behavior. And then I think when we accept that, our response to their behavior is completely different. because we
Right.
have more compassion for them, you know?
Yeah. So it's interesting that there's a phrase that you use that reminds me how we often say, this thing forced me to do such and such, or this thing made me do such and such, or this or that, whatever. And the truth of the matter is, nothing can make you do anything. The real truth is you are always presented with options every single moment, and you have the option to choose A, B, or C, or however many options there are. And really, ultimately, you are the one making the choice. And so when I say, well, he made me do it, no, that's not true. He did something, and as a result of the something that he did, I made the choice to do that.
Yes.
There are other things I could have done, but that's what I chose to do. And it's not to make me wrong. It's to remind me that at the moment, I had the option to make a particular choice. And this is something that I think that because we forget who we are in the early stage, and we go through that process, then we can simultaneously forget about our ability to make choices. So those two things are very, very tightly coupled. And ultimately, when you remember the truth of who you are, then every choice you make going forward is going to be a reflection of who you are choosing to be in that moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. We have to be, I think this is another thing we are actually not even taught, that you are responsible. We are blamed by, our adults, and then we learn to blame others. And then we have that like almost like a get out clause that it wasn't my fault. But the joy that we are talking about comes from actually taking that responsibility, that I am responsible and I have the choices. And even if we make a choice that maybe on hindsight seems to not have been right, but we have chosen that and we can accept that. And I think that's where that inner kind of a peace or inner joy we are talking about comes from.
Right.
From that responsibility, having taken that responsibility that I have a choice. And if somebody, puts me down, I don't have to take it on.
Right. So now I see L'Oreal has added a couple of interesting points here. The first one I want to acknowledge is she says, as a grandparent, I wish I knew what I know now when raising my children. Well, how many of us wish we knew then what we know now? I mean, that's a common thing. But the fact of the matter is, even no matter where we are in our life, we always, I believe this to be 100% true, we always make the best choices we're capable of making with whatever information we have available to us at the time. Yeah. It's not that we made necessarily bad or illegal or wrong choices. Maybe we just didn't have enough information to make more, let's say, more elevated, more illuminated, more enlightened choices. So don't fault yourself for that. Just notice, okay, those are the choices I made then. It had these impacts. Maybe the impact might be something that actually hurt someone, in which case I now have the choice, the option to go and make amends with that person.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's all that part of forgiving, isn't it? Self-forgiveness and self-acceptance.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because again, what a relief, when you say, oh, you know what, it's okay. That's the only way I knew how, or those are the only abilities I have at that time. And we just say, it's okay. What a relief that is. And what a sense of peace and joy that brings us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And forgiving others too.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry. I think I accidentally stepped on you there when you were talking. I was just going to say, L'Oreal also mentioned a couple of other things here. First, adults choose for their children until they become of age. I think that's very true. A parent has a responsibility to, take care of the kids and that sort of thing. And so sometimes a parent might make a choice that the kid doesn't want, but it's in the best interest of the kid. Now, what I have come to realize for myself is, if I were coaching parents now, I might coach parents to say, I wonder how I would feel if my mom was making this choice for me right now. Mm-hmm. If you can put yourself in the kid's place before you actually implement your choice, you might find a way that allows the kid to see the wisdom of your choice in his or her own way.
Yes.
That's how I would do it now. I didn't do that when I first had kids because I didn't know a damn thing.
That's right. Yes. And I mean, I have 2 grandchildren, and
Right.
gosh, how different I am.
Well,
You know?
there's a good reason why, I remember Neil Donald Walsh in one of his Conversations with God books suggested that maybe parents shouldn't even be the one raising the kids. It should be the grandparents.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think some wisdom there.
That's true. That's very,
Yeah.
very true. Yeah. Unless parents there's a rule that parents should go through certain parenting classes. Or, as I said earlier, if we did teach this to children at school, they would be different adults and different kind of parents, wouldn't they? But
I agree with that.
Yeah.
At the same time, I also know that people who are young and impetuous, they think that they're invulnerable. They think that that nothing can happen to them. I was like that. I'm sure you were like that too.
Yeah.
We're all like that as kids. We're indestructible.
Yeah.
And it's the aging process, which, we make aging sound like a bad thing, but I like to call it the wisdoming process.
Yes.
We become wiser with years.
Yes.
And that's going to happen to everybody and say, yeah, I probably shouldn't have made that choice back then.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're so right. There are so many things when I reflect back that, I could have behaved so much differently. And it is, I think, wisdom.
Exactly.
At this age we have.
And think about parents for a second. Young parents, 20s, maybe early 30s, they're still pretty wild and crazy. They still want to party. They still want to have fun. And so the kids get neglected in that process.
Yeah.
Maybe not to a huge extent, but to some extent. So maybe we've kind of built a society that's now actually tearing the nuclear family apart.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very, very heartbreaking thing for me to see. But if we had this whole notion of a nuclear family with parents, children, grandparents, and maybe even great grandparents and uncles and aunts and all those in close proximity to one another, we wouldn't have half the problems that we have in this world. Yeah,
you're so right. And there are still some cultures where it still happens. But then, there are other cultures where it happens, but then it's also very oppressive.
Yeah.
It's, they're very strict on the children. And they have children, like girls are not allowed to get educated, or if they are educated, they mustn't work. So there's a couple of sides to that as well. But I think that family structure is definitely not there, which is something that we can regret. Yeah.
There's some great comments on the chat here, and I'm glad to see so many people engaging us. L'Oreal says, we wouldn't need so much healing if we were embraced as ourselves when born and not impacted so much by society and beliefs. Absolutely, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, so true.
Right, and the only way society is going to change is through the impact of people like you and me and these people who are watching this show, taking these tools and starting to bring them out into the world so that future generations don't have to go through the same challenges.
Yes.
I also want to acknowledge Sarah. Boundaries are essential for us to push against so that we can grow. That's an amazingly beautiful statement and very powerful. Yeah. We need the boundaries so that we can say, oh, I'm pushing up against a fence here. Why is this fence here? Oh, it's to protect me. Well, I don't think I need protection. I'm going to move this fence a little bit.
Yes.
And that's exactly what we do,
We do. Yes. Yeah. That reminds me of, we a lot of us say that's comfort zone, isn't it? The boundaries we have about, oh, yes, this is comfortable. But it's such a funny word, comfort zone. Right. It's comfortable, but it's not a happy place at all.
No, I know.
Somewhere, right? It's somewhere where we really want to get out of it, but then the fear comes in. Oh my God, what if? And sometimes we stay there, and sometimes we get out. And for me, learning some of those tools that Dr. Susan Jeffers teaches in Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, which is one of the workshops I used to run. Kind of things like our fears are false expectations appearing real. Everybody feels fear. And when I learned those things, I thought, yeah, if everybody feels fear, what are they doing about it? And you learn what they do. And it's about just saying, okay, I am fearful. What's the worst that'll happen? And then you just step out of that boundary. And wow, then it's like yes, I did it kind of thing.
Yeah. And fear is a very, very funny thing, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Some people are empowered by fear, and some people are completely frozen by fear. Yeah. Or at least that's how they describe it. They say, I'm feeling afraid and I'm going to just go for it, Yeah. Or I'm feeling afraid and man, I just can't risk it because, they have all these stories in their head that somehow if they do something, they're going to be harmed, they're going to be damaged, they're going to be destroyed. And the ego mind can't tolerate that.
No, that's right. Yeah. And that is where, we want to go back to that source of our own inner self, the inner joy. And once you're tapped into that, then I think we use our brain much more appropriately. Because we have the side of the brain, which is creative, which wants to grow. And then, of course, we have the fear side, don't we? Which then keeps us stuck. But I think when we are able to, and as I said, for me, having those tools of, it's okay. And this is what people do. Those people who don't let fear stop them, they feel that fear and they say, I'll do it anyway. And then when you do it anyway, and then again, it's been my experience too, that the more you do of even like this public speaking, I mean, I was somebody who could not even speak to three people outside. I used to go and pick up my children at school, and I would not go and stand with like a bunch of parents that were standing there waiting to pick up their children because I was fearful. I'm not good enough, what will I say? They'll laugh at me. And now I do public speaking. And it's getting easier and easier and easier.
Right.
And then even then, sometimes there is fear, which is fine. And then you just go out there and do it anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
You talk about some of the judgments that you're afraid that other people have of you, like they're going to laugh at me because they think I'm stupid or whatever. You have all these stories. I mean, not just you, but I think all of us do.
All of us.
And the funny thing is, 99% of those stories are 100% false.
Yes.
They are completely fabricated by the ego mind because the ego mind is trying to protect you from something that it experienced years ago. Mm-hmm. And this is where the shadow piece starts coming in. And so what I used to be in Toastmasters and I used to help people. I mean, I love public speaking. I've never actually had a problem, standing up and speaking. The problem that I had was standing up and singing. Now that I had a challenge with. But anyway, my point is, as I participated with the people in Toastmasters, I would hear them talk about, I'm terrified of public speaking. And even now, you know the statistics where they say that public speaking is like number one thing that people are afraid of. The truth is, people aren't afraid of public speaking at all. The truth is, what people are afraid of is something completely different. So, for example, if I were just to start talking to you, you'd have no problem talking with me, even if you are afraid of public speaking, right? So you're not afraid of speaking to someone in public. You're afraid of something else. And this is what I was telling people. I said, go up on stage and tell me what's really going on for you. And they say, well, I'm worried what people are going to think of me. I'm worried that they're going to laugh at me. I'm worried that blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's what you're worried about. Now, come back here into the audience and watch someone else go up on stage. What are you thinking about that person right now? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm thinking that this is a pretty good speech. I'm thinking that, wow, that's quite a story this person went through. Wow, that's a challenge. I'm inspired. This is what actually happens when people are sitting in those chairs. They're not judging you.
No.
Maybe once in a while, someone will be sitting there scowling at you. And you can be making up all kinds of stories about how this person is receiving you. And then later, that person can come up to you and say, wow, that was the most inspiring speech I've ever seen. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's just the way they are, that. So it's funny. When you actually analyze it, you recognize that the fear is, as you said, false evidence or false
expectations
appearing real.
Real, yes. Yeah, that is so true. It's you're so right, actually. It is afraid of other people's judgment. And yet we are there to give. So if we stood there and started thinking about them and what they want to bend, why are they there and what they want to get out of us,
right?
It would completely change the dynamics of how you are. And everybody is thinking about themselves. Those people are probably sitting there thinking, oh, am I looking all right? And am I dressed properly? And am I fitting in with this group and things like that? So, and the thing
I have a piece of toilet paper hanging out my butt.
Yes.
The thing is, here, if you think about this for a second, if you walked up on stage with toilet paper hanging out your pants, people would start laughing.
Yes.
And they'd be snickering probably because they don't want to embarrass you.
Yes.
And then you'd look at them and say, what? And you just ignore the toilet paper. Just do that. They just start to fall in love with you. And they say, oh, that. Well, I guess we'll get rid of that. And you're done.
Yeah, that's right. And that's our nature. It's our natural self, isn't it? If a child came out like that,
right, they
would be just so natural about it.
Yeah, exactly.
They would just say, oh, okay. Yeah. Throw it off and that's it. Carry on with normal life.
We are such funny creatures in so many ways. Yeah. And we're delightful and lovable and beautiful and amazing at the same time.
Yes.
Really.
And that's true. Yeah. And then another thing about fear is many of us think that when we feel fear and when we have not completely prepared everything to perfection, we can't go out there and do it. Right. And yet what I've learned is you've actually got to put your foot out there and say, I'm going to do it, commit, and then you have to do it.
Right.
And that is what gives you the confidence to step out of that comfort zone as well. Whereas some people think, no, when I've got it already, when I'm perfect at it, but that often doesn't happen. Then you never do what you want to do.
Well, there's a thing that I call the perfection paradox, where we are concerned about trying to be perfect, when in fact we already are perfect. Mm-hmm. And this is the problem that most people can't understand. The ego mind says, no, you're not perfect. You got all kinds of flaws. You got all kinds of errors and character defects and all this kind of stuff. That's what your ego mind says. But the truth is, you are perfect just as you are right now, even in your desire to continue growing and expanding and maybe changing this and adjusting that. That's all perfect. That's all part of your journey. So enjoy it.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And I like to say we are all perfectly imperfect because none of us are perfect at anything. We all have our strengths and we all have weaknesses, which are all there for a reason. Yeah. And so, just enjoy that journey.
Right. And Nazmina added something here that I'd like to just comment on. It's true. You are never ready. I love that because how many times have I held myself back from doing something because I thought, oh, just not quite ready yet. Got to do this. Got to add this detail. Got to do this. Do you have that problem too? Do you find that in your life?
Yes, many, many times. Yeah. Yeah, you feel like you have to, I have to be completely prepared and ready and looking perfect before you can do it.
Right.
Yeah. And hello, Nazmina. She's actually my aunt.
Oh, okay. Nice. Well, welcome, Azmina. Glad to have you here. We got Azmina's whole family here, probably.
Ottawa in Canada, she's.
No. Ottawa in Canada. Yeah, that's great. Mm-hmm. So we got people from Ottawa. We got people from the UK. I know Sarah's in the UK. Mm-hmm. Sarah probably lives not too far from where you are. I think she's in the southern part of England as well.
Okay.
So,
great to meet you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, and somebody's from Bermuda. Renee, wow. I've been to Bermuda. That is a beautiful, beautiful place. I love Bermuda.
Yes, fantastic. Wow.
Yeah.
Great. I'm so glad we are resonating with people.
Yeah. And no, and Lordielle from Atlanta, Georgia, I assume. Well, she says Atlanta, so I'm assuming it's Georgia. Yeah. This is great. So now, what more can we say about fear? Because fear is like the one obstacle that everybody faces, no matter what's going on in their lives. And it is probably the biggest obstacle that keeps us from connecting to our joy.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit more about how we can maybe dissolve fear and get us back connected into that joy space.
Yeah. I think, the type of things that has helped me is first to acknowledge my feeling. If I am feeling fearful, to actually, instead of saying, oh, no, and push it down and not do anything about it, I like to just breathe and say, okay, actually I am feeling this fear and this is where I'm feeling, and I'm acknowledging and accepting it. And then to write down my fears, because I feel when they're running in the head, round and round and round, you freeze. You don't do anything about it. And then again, we feel unhappy and whatever. So write them all out and then ask myself, is this one day 100% false? I'm just expecting this, that people are going to laugh at me. Is that really, really true? And most times it isn't. So, kind of start to cross them out. Or if it's failure, well, what's the worst that can happen? And then I like to use this scenario. If I'm standing here and I want to go there and I'm just fearful of, I'm going to experience something beyond, and I don't go and I never try, how am I going to feel? Now, if I'm going to try, it may work out, but it may not. What can I do when it doesn't work out? I can do something different. Which one would I rather? Stay here stuck, or rather experience? And even if it doesn't work out, I can still do something about it. Right. And so that way, I felt it gave me courage to go forward. Right. So those are some of the tools that I have used to overcome the fears.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And just say yes to opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, you've hit on some very, very important points. First, of course, is awareness. You have to become aware of what's going on in your life. And you have to be aware of, not only what's going on outside, but what's going on in here. Mm-hmm. And when you become aware of it, then you simply have to accept it as this is what it is. Mm-hmm. And part of your process of just writing things down is a way of saying, oh yeah, I'm feeling fear and I'm feeling it in my gut on the lower right side, or I am noticing that my heart feels like it's pounding like crazy, or whatever happens to be true for you. You can write down all those details and you can say, okay, so my heart's pounding. What does it really mean? Well, all it really means is that your heart is pounding. It means nothing else. Everything else that we put to that is just thought, story, conclusion, interpretation, and it's all based on ego-mind projection, is really all it is. If you can just simply accept something for what it is without putting a story onto it, then you can deal with it. You see? If you have to deal with the story as well, that makes it so much harder. And that is really what holds people back, is this ongoing story.
That's right. Yeah, I think that's so powerful what you just said about, make up stories. It's if the heart is pounding, that's all it is. And right. and so what? Yes, it'll settle down once we grow.
Well, I know. For me, for example, when I start to feel a little bit fearful, I notice my breath gets shallower and shallower and shallower. Mm-hmm. When that happens, I say, oh, I'm breathing shallowly. That's what I say to myself. Mm-hmm. Take a deep breath. Open that up again. Just by doing that alone helps me to dispel the fear.
That's right. Yeah. And that shows the mind-body connection, doesn't it?
Exactly.
When we do something like if we're feeling underconfident or down, or like you said, fearful, and you breathe and you go and you kind of widen your shoulders, it changes. It changes how you start feeling as well. Yeah, sometimes we can't always work at our thoughts, or maybe we don't even know how to change the thoughts, but we can change our physiology
Right.
and take those deep breaths and relax the body. And that in itself is a huge, makes a huge difference. Yeah.
Right.
You hit a good point there.
Yeah. Well, you talked about writing things down and then just looking at each thing that you've written and saying, well, is that really true? Or am I just making this up?
Mm.
And if it is true, then what does it really mean? Does it mean anything?
Yeah.
And so you actually create a process for yourself to take that thought, that story, even if it's only, 20 words to describe the story, it's still a story that came from your mind. And when you write it down, you can look at it and say, what an interesting story. I
That's right.
that word to be very, very powerful. Oh, what an interesting story.
Yes, and I've often
where did that come from?
Yes, and that reminds me often when I'm coaching people, I've said to them, look, you've got the story here which is making you unhappy, and you can turn that story into whatever we were talking about, into this. Which one would you like? Because they're both just stories.
Right.
Which one would you like to accept?
Right.
The one that makes you happy or the one that's making you unhappy? It's only stories. So that's also very, very powerful when you bring it out and look at it as an observer.
Right. Yeah. Now, Sarah just brought up a real interesting point. As you're writing this down, I believe that's what she's referring to. She says, ask the question, is it fear or is it anticipation? Mm-hmm. Now, I know some people do make a distinction between those two kinds of emotional complexes. I think that there's definitely an element of fear that probably goes through anticipation as well. But a great idea here, Sarah, is try to remember the first time you felt it and what was happening. I like that. If you can remember the first time, you might have to go back a long way in time. And for some people, you might say, oh, I remember feeling this yesterday. Okay. Did you feel it before yesterday? Yeah, actually, I felt it about a month ago. All right. Did you feel it before a month ago? So you can slowly regress yourself in that way. Eventually, to a point where you can say, yeah, I remember that feeling when my mom, she got all upset with me because I spilled something on the kitchen floor or whatever. And I remember my body just tensing up. I can't remember a time before that. I was only 4, 5, 3, 6, whatever years old at the time. And that's had an impact on me ever since.
Right.
So don't, whatever you do not minimize little tiny things that may have happened to you way back when you were a kid.
Yeah.
Because those things may have, you may have actually felt a body restriction, like that tightening of the muscles. And you said to yourself, oh, I don't like this feeling. And now you're trying to avoid it every time that something similar seems to happen. And so the ego mind helps out in its own way by every time something similar is about to happen, it reminds you about it and warns you. Yes. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, yes. Another thing I've learned recently, which like you say, when feeling comes, I wanted to avoid it because I didn't want to feel that. And it was obviously from somewhere, or, when I was little, that things must have happened. But now I've learned to actually focus on it. Oh yeah, my heart is feeling really, really heavy, and breathe into it. And sometimes I get little insights of that, probably not completely the exact incidences, but some incidences of why that's feeling. My big one for me used to be rejection. I used to avoid that feeling of pain when I felt I would be rejected or whatever, or if somebody else is going through processes which I say is rejection, I start feeling the pain, and now I focus much more on it. And another thing I'm also learning is to also check in with my intuition, which I never knew how to use my intuition. And I feel like that's really our GPS. It's really our guidance system because it tells us the truth. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing I'm training myself to use more and more and more. Because I used to be so left brain, so fearful, and never use that part of my brain, which is intuitive and creative. Mm-hmm. And I'm teaching myself. I'm probably now almost 60% there. So yeah. So that's another.
I just wanted to take a moment to honor Lordiel and Renee, a beautiful exchange happening on the chat here. And it's lovely to see people supporting each other on the chat. I'm not going to go through the details of what Renee said, but suffice to say that she's struggling with some kind of a relationship, and Lordiel just said something that I think really resonated with her. It's beautiful to see that kind of interaction going on. So thank you all for doing that.
Lovely.
Azmina, earlier on, we talked a little bit about responsibility, and I think that through this conversation about fear and how to deal with fear, it kind of brings us back to that responsibility thing. When I'm feeling fear, I have the power to make a choice about how I'm going to deal with that fear.
Yeah.
And it's my responsibility, really, to do that. And some people use the word response ability. I have the ability to respond to this fear rather than reacting to it. That's how I interpret that. So what do you want to say about that?
Yeah, no, I think that's very, very true. I think what happens sometimes, though, if we are told, you're responsible, but then you don't know how. You don't know what to do. All you have always just known is to say that other person is responsible. So I think it's when we learn that, especially for me, when I learned that it was my responsibility, then I started asking myself that question. Okay, so if I am responsible for feeling this way when this person did or said this, what am I going to do about it? And that kind of then would bring the ball in my court. And either I had to get more assertive, or I had to communicate differently so that I would get a response which was honest, maybe, because a lot of times I wasn't even communicating things. I was just holding it back, but blaming that it's the other person's fault that this is happening. So I think many times it's because we don't know that we are responsible, and also what exactly does it mean to be responsible, and how to then manage that, how to bring the change in our lives.
Yeah, that's really important, I think. And for me, the responsibility piece, I think we have. It's a sad thing, I think, in our culture today, certainly in American culture. I don't know if this is true elsewhere. It seems that we have become such a litigious society that we're always putting blame for things onto some other people. And now we've even, created legislation. So we have this thing called hate speech. People can't even say something for fear of offending some group somewhere.
Yeah.
And, who's really responsible when offense happens? Is it the person saying the thing, or is it the person who's hearing the thing? Why can't we just speak our truth and let the other person accept it or not? Why do I have to monitor the words that I choose and avoid hurting someone's feelings?
Yeah.
That is a completely back-asswards way of doing things, I mean, ultimately, as we said before, I have no power to make you feel anything. That's not, I don't have that power. I do have the power to say things that might be intentionally hurtful, and you have the power then to be hurt. You can also, on the other hand, if you are an elevated and enlightened person, can say, this person is speaking from ego and it's not about me.
Yeah. Yes, that's very true. Yeah. And I think when we do that and when we take responsibility, I think we can then our vibration is different. The way we will react is different. And that then I think can help to change that society. Where if there is that culture of, blaming somebody who isn't your color or somebody who isn't your caste or whatever it is, by taking the responsibility, we can change that society. But by blaming, I think the change is much slower. And like you say, then the government takes over and has legislation, and we are then stopped in our tracks.
It's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to end anytime soon. We as individuals have to reclaim our own sovereignty, claim our own ability to, to protect ourselves. We have to own the truth of who we are, and we have to own our own responsibilities for the choices that we make. I am not responsible for how you feel as a result of anything I think, say, do, or feel. I am responsible if I do something that physically hurts you and causes you pain or damage or something, then I have to take responsibility for that action,
yes.
Right? And that's what I think we've just gone completely nuts over on the other end of the extreme. And what we need is to come back into balance, which is the last area that I want to talk about today, is balance.
Balance, that's right, yes. So I wonder if the pandemic is bringing some kind of balance in some areas of our life.
I sure hope so.
Yeah. But that a balanced life is very, very important. Balancing our physical with spiritual, generally having a balanced life of how much exercise we are doing, how much meditation we are doing, how much, the kind of food we are eating, balance between contributions. So, that whole wheel of life of balance.
Right.
And I think when we have a balanced life and we are having those quiet moments, it helps you to reflect. If you're exercising, that also increases the feel-good factor in the body. And I think to me, that aspect is very, very important. And of course, there are all different levels of balance. This wheel of life is just one where you at least can identify where you are at in each area of your life.
Right. Yeah. And the beauty of, the wheel of life is a good example, actually. The beauty of that tool is you can draw a pictorial representation that describes how you see your life in I think 8 different areas.
Yeah.
And you're somewhere between 0 and 10 on this wheel. So from 0 is the middle and 10 is you're on the outside. And if you join the dots that you make there, you end up with a pretty crooked wheel unless you are very much in balance. All right. Now, the beauty of this tool is, here's where I am today. What can I do to improve balance in these areas? And then you create it, and then maybe a week or a month later or something, you come take a look and say, yeah, I'm getting more in balance. This is great. Now, someday you might have all the way on the outside for the entire wheel. Great. But that doesn't mean you're done. See, now when you're on that wheel, you can say, all right, I'm going to shrink everything down to halfway point and say, how can I do even more? See, that's the beauty of this wheel of life exercise. You can use it over and over and over and over again to keep bringing yourself into balance while at the same time expanding yourself to be more of who you really are. And being more of who you really are means that you are connecting continually to that deep natural state of joy that we've been talking about.
Yeah, yes, that's brilliant, because I never thought of it as bring it back and then look at what can I do more about it. So that's a really good idea, because the natural part of us human beings is to grow.
Correct.
Is to keep growing continuously in all areas of our life. And I like to joke about it, and I say not this ways, hopefully, but I'm quite small, so I like a few inches above. But besides that, as a joke, that I think it's a wonderful tool, and whenever I use it with people, they're like, "Wow, this is so amazing!" Because we never thought of our life as that kind of a balance that we need. And of course, many times depends on where we are in our life, our priorities will be different.
Right.
So there will be some areas which we need to, if we've got young children, there'll be some areas which will be more important at that age than different, but more or less, if we can get it as circular as we can, will be the best thing, where our life flows a lot more.
Right.
And when I talked about our brain, I think the right and the left brain would be much more balanced.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think the word balance might be a little bit misleading to some people, because, we always think of, you put so much stuff on this side of the balance and so much stuff on this side, and if they are equal height, then we know we've achieved balance. But I prefer to think of the wheel of life more as how I rate my life in that area from a 0 to 10,
Right.
where 0 is at the center and 10 is on the outside. So, for example, maybe I have, let's say I make $100,000 a year. And that sounds like a nice sum of money, but you're sitting over there making $2 million a year. Now, in your mind, you might not be anywhere near where you want to be, and I might be right at 10. Maybe that's all I want. So we have to take into account what are our life circumstances? Who am I really? What is my purpose? Do I need extra money in order to do that? You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So each
Yes.
one of us has to look at that concept of balance from the perspective of our own lives and who we really are.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. It doesn't mean that just because you're earning a certain amount of money that you're more successful and
Right.
that you put yourself as 10 and you compare yourself with others. It's very much about what are my values?
Correct.
Where do I want to be in life? What does success mean to me? In my life, how much quiet time do I need? Some of us might need more. If you're practicing mindfulness in a day-to-day, living, you're probably much more balanced and you don't need a lot of time to really quieten your mind down. But other people might need more time.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's very much what you want out of life. Exactly.
Right.
Agree.
So we're getting close to being out of time here, but I do want to acknowledge Nazmina's question, and I want to give you a chance to give an answer to this before we close out. So Nazmina asks how to be assertive with multiple question marks. So Azmina, how would you respond to that?
Okay. So again, it's from my experience and what I have learned is to, when I'm expressing myself, to say, I feel such when you behave this way. So that would be one. It's communicating from my point of view and explaining how I feel to the other person rather than attacking them and saying, you did this, you did that.
Correct.
Now, if I want a certain thing where somebody is doing something which is, it's a little bit like, okay, it's my responsibility. But, sometimes there's something you want, which the other person is maybe, I'm not quite sure if I'm describing this exactly, but the other person is somehow being obstructive purposefully. And that's maybe where you need, again, it depends where you want to be assertive. And that you want to be assertive there, or then I think you just basically have to be just very strong, show that you're, courageous and say exactly what you want with that, like the power and not with the fearful voice of,
Right.
this is what my expectations are. And maybe some consequences. If this doesn't happen, then this is what will happen. I think, I think that's, I don't know, you probably have some other view on it as well and how you would describe it.
Well, I think that the concept of assertiveness is an entire course unto itself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're going to be able to give a magic bullet kind of response. But I agree with everything you said. It really boils down to putting a stake in the ground about who you really are and not letting anybody move you off center, no matter what. But that doesn't mean you have to be violent or aggressive or anything like that. You just set your own boundaries, as Sarah mentioned earlier. He's talking about boundaries. Remember, it's perfectly okay to set your own boundaries and say, okay, I'm drawing the boundary here. This is enough. And when you're ready to have a conversation about this, I'll be available to listen. But right now, I'm leaving because I value myself that much. You see, so there's all kinds of different ways you can do it. And I don't want to get too much into that conversation right now.
Yes, I think a lot depends on the circumstance and where you want to be assertive as well, I think.
Correct. Yeah, it's a huge topic.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll do a course on it because I think it is a very, very important one. Well, Azmina, it's been an hour already. Can you believe it?
I know, it's going fast.
It's going fast. It's been a great conversation. I want to thank you so much for being here and for sharing your wisdom. Now, I know that you have an offering here. You want to, you're telling people that you want to offer a free coaching session to anyone who purchases your book. That's this book right here, Freedom to Be Me, which you can grab on Amazon. Now, I'm going to drop the link into, oh, I have to type it, I'm afraid. Let me put this in. Well, I'll put the link on my website and you can grab it there. And then once you have a copy of her book, you just take a snapshot of your purchase and head over to Azmina's website at azminajiwa.com and then contact her there and say, hey, here's my purchase. I want my free coaching call. And she will set that up for you. Is that about right, Azmina?
That is right, yes, and it'll be my pleasure.
Okay, well, I'll make sure that information is on my website when the recording goes up. Meanwhile, is there anything else that you'd like to share with people before we close out for the day?
Well, I'd just like to say that there is, if they want to sample the book before they buy it, there's 3 chapters they can download from my website, azminajiwa.com. And yeah, the last words is, be you, be your unique self, because you are unique and you are special. You've come in this world with gifts to give and to share. So just be you. And thank you for inviting me. It's been lovely.
Yeah, I love that. Just be yourself. But I think it was Oscar Wilde who said, be yourself because everyone else is taken. I think it was Oscar Wilde. It's a pretty funny statement, but he's right. You know, everyone else is going to be themselves, so you be yourself. And when you are yourself 100% of the time, believe me, you will be connected to your natural joy. And that's really what we're all about today. So I want to thank you all for watching today's program. Thank you all so much, you people on the chat. You were just so alive and active, and I'm very, very excited about that. So thank you so much. I just want to remind folks that you can watch the recording of this episode and every other episode that I've ever produced on my website at lifemasterytv.com. That's life-mastery-tv.com. Some people like to say life-mastery-tv.com. Well, you know what I mean. You'll find it. And I truly hope you enjoyed this presentation. In a few hours, everyone who registered will receive an email with a link to a feedback page. My request is that you spend a couple of minutes, go to that feedback page, write a review, because those reviews help us to promote this material. And I hope that you can find it in your heart to give us a 5-star review. That would be awesome. But I want you to be authentic. Remember, you got to be true to yourself. And finally, I'm going to ask you to remember to practice what I call the life mastery mantra. And we do this every day. It's important. It goes like this. I gratefully forgive the imperfect being I have been in the past. I gratefully accept the magnificent being I am right now. I gratefully welcome the evolved being I am becoming in each new moment. So until we meet again, my name is David McLeod. I am your Life Mastery Coach, wishing you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. See you, Azmina, and see you all next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye from me.
Bye.